Maybe Sushant, if you want to start with a quick background, what do you do at Wormhole? What is the focus? Let's start with that.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sushant. I do strategy at the Wormhole Foundation, which is a very vague title, I know, but it's kind of a multifaceted. I manage a couple of products. I work on network expansion. I work with a lot of teams. And as for my background, I've been working in the space for almost 6 years. Started in Polkadot, went over to just pure DeFi, did a lot of growth things, and then been working at Wormhole for the last year or so. Yeah.
Awesome. Um, and maybe taking it a little further. So, I think the focus has been in the recent past on, working with institutions, how institutions are adopting tokenization. Like recently it was announced, Wormhole is now kind of the key partner for Securitize for its Biddle products for Google Cloud. So if you can talk a little bit on how you see institutions adopting tokenization, how Wormhole is playing a part there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Something that's very interesting is that a lot more, institutions are obviously coming on chain, but what that means is, typically in the past it was like you can trade gold, you can trade stocks and like real estate and whatnot. But now, you've got players like BlackRock, literally the biggest asset manager in the world. They've got a money market fund that's like $400 billion in and of itself, and they've got multiple money market funds. And they decided to tokenize one of them called Biddle via Securitize, which is like the tokenization subsidiary. And so all of a sudden, you can kind of engage with a money market fund on chain, which you couldn't really do before. If you wanted to, you buy one of these funds, it gives you like debt guaranteed 5% APR because just government debt is infinitely scalable. You'd have to go into your Fidelity account or, whatever, your TradFi account, let's say, to be able to access these things. And, you can only buy these shares, these ETFs, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., like 6.5 hours a day. And now, Securitize, they've brought on this money market fund on chain such that you've gone from this 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. kind of NASDAQ trading hours all the way to just 24/7, where someone can mint this money market fund, they can redeem it, they can trade it, which in the past hasn't really been possible. So that's happening really rapidly. Obviously, but if BlackRock does it, everyone and their mom's going to do it. Every single, not only large asset managers, but also tiny family offices with like 100 mil, 550 mil, they're getting into the business of, why don't we tokenize? Or better yet, let's say we have a strategy, right? Athena is a great example of this. Athena fundamentally, yes, they provide a stable coin at USDE, but all it is actually a representation of a delta neutral strategy. It's actually like basically a vault token that is pegged to a US dollar. And so you're going to be seeing a lot more of these funds kind of just tokenizing their own fund, putting it on chain, and all of a sudden they've got a stable coin that they can kind of, print money from and all the rest of it and get, added composability on chain. And of course, BlackRock's paving the way. Obviously, Wormhole is very deeply involved because you don't want to necessarily do this on a single chain. Like doing it just on Ethereum is fine, but then you're limiting yourself to people who use Ethereum, which is less and less with each passing day. And so like Biddle, for example, with Securitize, they actually recently, maybe 2 months ago, went from only being on Ethereum mainnet to Solana. And so not only are they coming on chain, but they're actually going multi-chain very, very aggressively, which is very cool to see.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know, kind of building on that, I know we were in Hong Kong a few weeks back and we had this event with family offices at the bank. So, yeah, there's definitely a big trend of institutions coming on chain. And so, as more of these transactions come on chain, they go through Wormhole, a lot of people worry about security, reliability, what's going to happen. Are the funds secure as they're going from one chain to another? And this becomes even more critical as institutions come in, right? Because it's regulated and the transactions volume shoot up. So can you talk a little bit about that, like security, reliability? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that's interesting is that when you go into like TradFi, like security is kind of it's table stakes, right? Like security is not even necessarily a concern because like it's almost an assumption that everything you do within TradFi has so much regulatory oversight that it can't be like broken in any meaningful way. However, once you come on chain, then you have smart contracts, which is literally code, right? And typically in Web 2, there is no incentive to break code, right? If you break a front end element and it doesn't work properly, it's like who cares? But if you do it on chain and you break a smart contract, then there's economic incentive to do so, because then you can just straight up make money from exploiting code, which you couldn't really do in the past. And so Wormhole, has basically put security as number one simply because as if institutions are coming on chain, they want to make sure that they can worry about all the regulatory, the compliance, and all the rest of it. They don't want to have to worry about the security piece. And unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, there's so many different ways to do interoperability that you can kind of get lost in terms of what is really secure and what isn't secure. Because of course, every interoperability provider is going to be saying we're the most secure because they're incentivized to do so. Of course, so is Wormhole. However, we've kind of gone the extra mile by, we have this Guardian network where there's 19 Guardians, where, this kind of security makeup actually doesn't really exist with any other interop provider, at least to the same degree. In that, you have 19 guardians, which are, you've got Google Cloud as one of these guardians, you've got Rockaway X, etc. And the idea is that anything that goes through Wormhole, no matter what it is, has to kind of be approved by this set of 19 guardians. They have to actually come to consensus for anything to happen on chain. And now, of course, if anyone could be a guardian, it wouldn't make much sense. But like I mentioned, we've got Google Cloud as a backup. Guardian, we've got Rockaway X, we've got quite a few others as well to kind of actually showcase this security. So much so that Uniswap actually did an assessment on all the interoperability providers in crypto, in DeFi, and number one was Wormhole for their cross-chain messaging. And so Uniswap, of course, is a very OG blue chip protocol. They're extremely big. They care a lot about security. They've been through, so many different exploits and just time within the industry that they kind of, and that's really helpful for us having like a third party like Uniswap, basically saying, yep, you guys are the most secure out of everyone else. Everyone should use you. And of course, the best testament to this, of course, I can say how secure Wormhole is, but of course, we're exclusive interop providers for Securitize, right? And so the idea is that if you're able to get the biggest asset manager behind you, then it's kind of makes every other conversation a lot easier because they've done all the due diligence required to be like, yes, this is legit. This actually is extremely secure. So that helps us a lot in terms of like being credible to all the other institutions as well, as we're getting like so many other funds, like Apollo, for example, is like a $700 billion fund, is now, going on chain as well via Wormhole. So it's kind of like I don't want to say it's almost like social proof, but it's like if the biggest player has done all of that due diligence, then everyone else kind of trusts them as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. It does. And Securitize is also a portfolio company of Borderless, so we're very close to Carlos and them. I think they can definitely attest to the thing. Like they definitely go through a lot of diligence before working with any partner. And what is very interesting is through Wormhole, this tokenization, it doesn't have to be, if you just tokenize on one chain, you're just attracting users from that ecosystem. Like that's, I think, the biggest play, right? Like you can attract community users, dApps across all the ecosystems, that I think over 70, 75 chains now that Wormhole is integrated with.
yeah, I mean, in different ways, right? Like we have multiple different products. There's different ways that Wormhole can be live. Like Wormhole can be live with just messaging. Wormhole can be live with the token bridge. Wormhole can be live with Wormhole settlement. But yes, you're completely right. It's actually interesting. I was in Japan early this year. I was talking to like a lot of regulators and whatnot. And so for context, Japan historically has been super conservative when it comes to like DeFi and like just crypto regulations. But now they're kind of opening the floodgates. But then all of these banks that kind of want to start either having like a tokenized yen or they want to do things on chain with like US dollars, the only chain they care about is Solana, only because it's like US aligned. They could kind of focus on Ethereum, they could focus on Polygon, they could focus on any other chain, but they're like, no, we like Solana and we like USDC simply because they're US aligned. And then another thing, I was in Argentina and, Milei and all the rest of it, they want to start using the US dollar as like a reserve currency for, outside of the peso pretty much. And so all of those builders, they only really care about Solana simply because Argentina wants to be US aligned for the US dollar. They already use the US dollar on a daily basis. And so all the builders in question, they only really care about Solana. Of course, they're building all over the place, but Solana is like the number one priority as a result. So I think as time goes on, not only will like these chains be meaningful, but then the actual kind of affiliation with these chains is very geopolitically motivated. Funnily enough, we were at that dinner, right, in Hong Kong, and then we met the kind of like Hong Kong version of Securitize, right, DigiFT, where they tokenized UBS's money market fund on chain. And, they simply did that as like, okay, Securitize is American, we're going to be like the Asian Hong Kong base. And so our priorities are completely different to what, Securitize or BlackRock might care about. So yeah, we'll see a lot more kind of not only like fragmentation where more chains go live, but then you're going to see these like geopolitically aligned protocols going live on one chain simply because like, for external reasons versus just the TVL and liquidity on the chain.
And so maybe shifting gears now from institutions to more on the early stage side, right? So I know we also have a Sigma fund, which is basically there to attract the strongest entrepreneurs to come and leverage the wormhole tech. If you can talk a little bit about that, if as an entrepreneur, how should one approach it? What should one use it for? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Something that's very interesting is that early on we have a product called NTT, which is native token transfers. So I mentioned Biddle, which is like the money market fund. It used to be on Ethereum, now it's on Solana, and it kind of did that using NTT. When we launched that, it was very like not even handheld. It required a lot of collaboration from Wormhole and the integrating team. So the first token that went through NTT was Jito Sol, and so Jito and Wormhole worked really closely together for a long time to kind of get this together and make this happen. But then as time went on, we kind of optimized the developer process such that you could do everything from a single line of code. But you had to still use a terminal. You still had to have like development, understanding and knowledge. And now we have kind of like a user interface where you or I can click buttons and literally deploy a token cross chain. And so, we've put a very big emphasis on how do we make it much more easier for developers to kind of use our tech. But on top of that, to your point about Wormhole Sigma, it's like some teams, of course, they not only need help in terms of like the actual development, but they might need help raising money, i.e., from Borderless. They might want grants. They might want support within the ecosystem because they don't have necessarily the network to be able to communicate with all these teams. And kind of Sigma is kind of like this. I don't want to say Y Combinator. That's a bit too extreme, but like almost like this on-chain incubator that's powered by Wormhole in partnership with a lot of players like Borderless, of course, to let these builders not only build on chain, build multi chain, and get a lot of like support for raising money and all the rest of it, kind of in this one program. And so a lot of meaningful projects have actually come out of that, and just great builders, right? And they've kind of contributed to the Wormhole community as a result because these are people. So, for example, in Hong Kong, right? Very nascent like geography in terms of builders. Like lots of people want to do things there, but like nothing really has come out of Hong Kong thus far, just because not much has ever historically gone on there as far as DeFi is concerned. And so a lot of those teams, a lot of those builders are extremely good, but they don't know anyone in the industry. Maybe they don't know English, for all we know. And so having this kind of like, you know, formalized program in Wormhole Sigma has helped a lot of them because then we can connect them with people who speak their language, both, literally, but also in terms of like helping with them with what they need in a way that isn't so ad hoc. Like, of course, someone could DM me and I could point them in the right direction, but that's not really that helpful. And that's kind of what Sigma is trying to address.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, and building on that, actually, for us, like we definitely look at the projects in Sigma as kind of the top of the funnel. Speak to interesting ones from there, then go into deeper due diligence. And I can attest, like Securitize on the institutional side. Then there are actually a number of portfolio companies here today that have actually leveraged. So we have. We of course run the Wormhole Fund, which also has 15 other L1s as LPs, including Solana, Polygon, Aptos, Avalanche, Monad, a bunch of them. And we also have a deepen fund. So not only on the cross-chain side, on the Wormhole side, what was very interesting for me is a number of companies from our deepen fund as well. They are actually leveraging Wormhole and helping those tokens go cross-chain. Because as an entrepreneur, when you do a token launch, right, why would you not want to take advantage of the liquidity users, dApps across ecosystems? And I think entity there is very unique. I think a lot of founders have really loved entities. So yeah, maybe I think we are coming to the end as well. So like maybe kind of one last question just to squeeze it in. So kind of any advice you see, like what's the best way to reach out to you or somebody at Wormhole? How does someone get started? To
Um, like from perspective of a builder.
Yeah, from the perspective of a
Right.
builder.
Well, I mean, I think definitely apply to Wormhole Sigma. I think that's a very meaningful place to start. Tons and tons of support. Of course, you're able to speak to Amit directly through that, as well as myself and other people on the team. So that's probably the best way to connect because then, we have, of course, our DevRel team is extremely strong and it's growing every single day. And so often I'll be kind of, a team will have applied. They might not have even been accepted, but it's like, hey, they want to use Wormhole Settlement. I, of course, know the most about settlement internally. And so then they'll just point them to me and I'll just have a conversation with them, not even necessarily because they're part of Wormhole Sigma, just because they want to use the the tech, and obviously I want to help them. So I think that's probably the best place to start. Even if you don't have necessarily an idea of what you want to do, you can still apply and kind of get some guidance. Lots of teams have kind of come where like, yes, we can build things and we have some semblance of an idea, but we just need support or like turning this into a real protocol. Fun fact actually, there was a team that came through Sigma, passed all the rounds, succeeded, and then they're like, hey, and then Urban, who manages Wormhole Sigma, was like, hey, can you talk to them? They want to use settlement, and I was like, sure. And then when they pitched me the idea, I'm like, you guys are competing with us like directly. Now that's fine, by all means do that. But if you really want my advice, if you really want to like build something meaningful and additive as opposed to just competing, because yes, you can compete, but then it's like that's just a whole different ball game entirely. Build this thing which doesn't exist right now, and you can build it with the tech that we have. And they basically pivoted their entire company from that call, and now they're working on something else entirely. And literally this morning they sent me like a beta, and it's like, hey, we built out what we discussed like 3 months ago, and now it's live. So yeah, again, I'm glazing Wormhole Sigma quite a bit, but hit us up on Twitter, go into the Discord. Lots and lots of ways to get in touch with us. It's not that difficult.
To attest to that, like every project that we have connected with Wormhole, they have got very fast responses, and they have kind of really done well and got the right guidance. So awesome. I think we are at time as well. So maybe we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, everyone.